Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm David Percy. Up first, we've got the Southeast Alaska Weather Zone realignment effective September 13th, 2022, just 3 days from now. And that's for the Juneau Forecast Office. And that affects public and fire zones, but not marine zones, and should be transparent to most users. And this change is going into effect or being made to use uses borough and census boundaries to help eliminate overwarning of National Weather Service alerts in Southeast Alaska. And if you have any questions, concerns, or comments, you can contact the website there at juneau.weather@noaa.gov for more detailed information. And from there, moving on to satellite imagery. You can see cleared out over southern Alaska, especially Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, and areas back toward the Kuskokwim Valley there. And also in the Copper River Basin, some sunshine breaking out and clouds lifting northward there with some scattered shower activity from the mid-Yukon River there eastward in and around Fairbanks. Rain showers ended there about 10 a.m., I believe, today, but that extended into the Yukon. And kind of cloudy over the eastern Copper River Basin, rain with a feed of moisture coming up across the Gulf of Alaska there. And that kept rain going, light rain, on the eastern North Gulf Coast. Nothing like you had the last few days, but about a third of an inch falling at Cordova with light rain on and off throughout the day today. And the Panhandle, mostly dry, some lingering light showers in the north there. Otherwise, just variably cloudy with light winds down to the south. And out to the west, the next front you can see pushing across the Pribilof Islands areas. And that brought some gusty winds and rain to St. Paul, St. George, down to the eastern Aleutians, with the system pushing eastward, starting to spread some wind and eventually some rain into the southwest coastal areas and the Alaska Peninsula, with the main low center a little farther back to the west there. And moving on to today's weather, you can see the frontal boundary there right across the Pribilofs earlier today and down across just near Adak. And that brought a peak wind gust to Adak there just ahead of the cold front of 53 miles per hour. That was the strongest one I could find around. Otherwise, winds gusting the Alaska Peninsula 25 to 35 miles an hour, as well as the southwest coast from Cape Newenham up to Cape Romanzoff, seeing winds gusting, picking up east-southeast 25 to 35 miles an hour, with rain on the increase there, light rain. And also moisture now, clouds after the sunny start to the day here over Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula area up into the Manduska Valley, Susitna Valley, clouds spreading northward from southern Cook Inlet in the afternoon, and showers in that rain area there for the eastern North Gulf Coast, isolated showers in the Panhandle, and some areas of light rain or showers there on the Brooks Range with that trough kind of extending down to the Koyukuk Valley. That amounts pretty light with all of that. And for tonight, pretty good warm front. It's pretty weak there east of Bristol Bay, but enough of a system there, southwest flowing enough moisture to start spreading the rain back into southern Cook Inlet, coming northward throughout the night. Same thing for the Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound. Manuscus, the Susitna Valley, probably staying dry. Some showers along the Alaska Range. Dry central northern interior and much of the Yukon River till you get down into the lower Yukon River Valley areas on out to the Delta. Be windy and rain there all the way down into northern Bristol Bay. And gusty winds and rain for the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians. Another trough swings into the central Aleutians for increased showers and a little bit of an increase in the winds, but you won't see those 50-plus mile-an-hour wind gusts you had today out that way. High pressure keeps it pretty nice over the eastern North Gulf Coast, Yakutat. Light winds and some clouds. Isolated showers possible there over the northern Panhandle. Basically looking pretty good there with variably cloudy skies. And for tomorrow, That system makes landfall. The front makes landfall. The low drifting slowly eastward there, almost north of St. Paul by mid-afternoon. Periods of rain and breezy conditions push inland from the southern Seward Peninsula, then a little bit eastward along that trough up the Yukon River Valley there, and into the Kuskokwim Valley, and some rain or showers from the western Alaska Range into Cook Inlet and the Susitna Valley, scattered showers for the Matanuska Valley, areas of light rain, fog, drizzle for the southern Kenai Peninsula, Kamishak, Kachemak Bays, on up to the North Gulf Coast, mostly sunny for the Panhandle, and dry with light winds. Same thing for the eastern interior, partly sunny skies, optimistically there, and also along the western Brooks Range as the showers really taper off. And then for the day on Monday, the front really weakens as it moves eastward, almost falls apart completely, especially up over the interior, but holding together enough with south to north flow there to keep moisture in over Cook Inlet, cloudy skies, but no heavy rains, nothing like we saw last week. Just periods of light rain for the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound. Some of that trying to slide into the north coast of the Panhandle. Otherwise, another dry day there, maybe a few more clouds. And so a couple of troughs rotating around the south side of that low center will bring more showers into the Pribilofs, eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. Lows tonight, 45 to 50 for the Panhandle. Otherwise, in the 40s to near 50 for the remainder of southern Alaska. Highs tomorrow, 50s most areas. Panhandle, mid-60s down over the southern areas, upper 50s or mid to upper 50s to the north. Lows on Monday morning, 45 to 50 again over the Panhandle, and 45 to 50 over the other areas of southern Alaska into Bristol Bay. And then highs, again, lower to mid-60s, maybe a couple of degrees cooler over the southern Panhandle, and maybe a couple of degrees warmer for areas in the north. Juneau forecast high of 60. In the 50s again for the south central Alaska, Kuskokwim Valley, Copper River Basin, upper 50s, Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island. Up to the north, lows in the 30s and 40s tonight, highs tomorrow in the 40s and 50s to near 60 around Eagle and Fairbanks. Lows 30s again to mid-40s with highs in the lower 60s now for Fairbanks, over to Eagle, maybe Northway and Tow, cooler on the Arctic coast and Bering Strait. 45 to 50 for the lows out west, followed by highs in the 50s.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather, we've got two areas of massive IFR, one from the northern interior valleys on out to the Arctic coast, and of course the other one showing up quite clearly there, southern Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, up into covering much of the central eastern Bering Sea and just about all of the Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula areas, marginal VFR northward across the Matanuska Susitna Valley into the western Copper River Basin to the Alaska Range, but from Yakutat on down the southeast coast, good VFR as well as the central interior there and most of the Seward Peninsula. For the afternoon, marginal VFR advances north and northeastward right up into the central interior there and improving. You can see portions of the Arctic coast becoming VFR and an area of IFR now right up into northern Cook Inlet, Prince William Sound, right up to the Alaska Range, and then IFR into the southwest interior, covering the central and eastern Bering Sea, right up into the Bering Strait. Fox Islands and Alaska Peninsula, and then a little bit better out to the west. And then for Monday morning, lots of IFR over the Bering Sea, down into the central Aleutians, Unumak Island area, with IFR pushing northeastward, right up into the central interior, most of the Copper River Basin, and right up into the Noatak Valley. Narrow band of VFR between that and the marginal VFR to the north, but staying VFR, Yakutat right on the edge there, but the southeast coast, all VFR. That becomes marginal for the Panhandle on Monday. Quite a change from the morning there. And then marginal VFR, eastern interior, Cook Inlet, Prince William Sound, Kodiak Island, and Atka Island. VFR, Adak westward. IFR, Pribilofs, right into the western interior, and that pushes into the central interior there, almost into the Yukon Flats, and then the eastern Arctic coast, VFR. And the Tuvik, marginal VFR improves to VFR. Look for some improvement in both passes up there in the Brooks Range throughout the day. Lake Clark and Merrill should be IFR at some point in the day tomorrow, meaning better conditions at other times. Same forecast for rainy and windy VFR, except possible marginal VFR in the southern approach. Isabel looks pretty marginal throughout the day on Sunday. Mentasta, marginal VFR though north side. And Tanita starts out VFR, becoming marginal throughout the afternoon. Portage, IFR from start to finish tomorrow, especially on that eastern entrance. And Chilkoot and White, another day of VFR flying for both those passes. Freezing levels about 4,000 feet over interior Alaska, right on down into about the Haines-Skagway area, and you can see quite a gradient there across the southeast coast from 4 to 10,000 feet, and then about 6,000 to 8,000 feet southwest part of the state and across the southern Bering Sea in the Aleutians. Icing looking something like this, quite an area of isolated moderate rime icing. You can see right into the mid and upper Yukon River Valley areas and pushing into the Kuskokwim Valley and across south central Alaska, with some considerable moderate possible for the Prince William Sound area and eastern North Gulf Coast. Also in Togiak Bay across the Alaska Peninsula, and that area should stay west of the Panhandle for at least probably through Monday as well. And for the jet stream on Sunday, looks like southwest winds at about 70 knots. In advance of that system, slowly moving in toward Nunivak Island from the Bering Sea. Stronger jet west-northwest coming out of the Russian Far East, covering much of the central and western Aleutians at about 100 knots or so. And looking at 9,000 feet, we've got westerlies, 50 knots, southern Bering Sea blowing right into the eastern Aleutians, turning southwest at 40 knots, Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island. Southerlies 40 knots over the southwest interior. And 3,000 feet. Easterlies, 35 to 40 knots there for the Bering Strait, Seward Peninsula, and into the southern Chukchi Sea, and southwest 50-knot winds across the Alaska Peninsula, and west-northwest 50 knots there southwest of the Pribilos, with those stronger winds, probably 40 to 50 knots right across the Fox Islands. And looking at the turbulence graphic, considerable moderate turbulence there over the Kuskokwim Mountains down into Togiak area, and from western Kodiak Island all the way across the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians to Adak Island. And after the break, I'll be back to look at the marine forecasts.
We can't just put the fires out because we can't put them out. We've tried that now for a century and it doesn't work. It just makes the next one worse.
You may see a place like this and think, total devastation. And it's not your fault for thinking that.
But that depiction is, as we've learned from countless experts over the last 2 weeks, not the whole story, and not how you should think about wildfires.
The truth is, there are lots of types of habitats out west, and fire affects them all in unique ways. So it's important to start thinking about the big picture with wildland fires. So let's first rewind. To help us understand what's going on out west, Rob and I started calling up the experts, and what we found was that the story of fire, particularly in the west, is complex. So to understand it, we planned a road trip.
Road trip time!
The goal of our road trip was to see as many forests as we could and meet experts around the region to help us understand the role fire plays out here. First destination was to find the forest burned by the now famous Great Fires of 1910. And at the heart of what is known as the Big Blow-Up, the logical first place to stop, the city of Wallace.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi. Good. Haley and I are in this cute town of Wallace, Idaho, which was completely destroyed by the 1910 fires. You can see how much damage this fire actually did. Let's send up the drone and see what the surroundings look like now. What we found was a small town surrounded by a dense forest, with every single tree just over 100 years old.
So everything we see behind us now, that's all new growth since 1910.
And to help us put these historic fires and the forests around Wallace in perspective, we met up with historian Diane Smith.
This is Wallace, and here are your fires.
All of this is the 1910 fires.
This is not that unusual. The fact is, it just was at a time in our development as a country. We noticed it, we paid attention to it, and we got the national attention for it.
Right. As it turns out, these fires helped reinforce the idea at the time that every fire needed to be suppressed at all costs. And this suppression for so long has led to new problems, namely thick forests full of fuel. But don't just take my word for it. Let me show you the difference. Notice how different this place is than this one that has been thinned out quite heavily in the past, or like an area like this that's been burnt quite frequently. In fact, both of these areas show how many forests would have looked in the past under regular burns. The dead and low-growing material gets consumed easily by fire, very much unlike this forest, which has had fire suppression for over 100 years and could lead to a high-intensity fire.
And all of this dry, dead material, that's problematic.
So we went looking for a big fire and just followed the smoke. Oh gosh, a huge crown fire. I gotta get this. These high-intensity fires aren't great because in many forests they kill all the trees over a large area, even in forests that used to be very resistant to frequent fires. And nobody knows that better than the people that work in this particular forest.
There's green coming back, and I guess I've gotten somewhat used to it, and I still have hope that the entire Sierra Nevadas won't look like this, that we can maybe get ahead of it. So the fires nowadays can move from the surface right into the tree canopies really easily, where in the past, fires would have kept trees pruned, they would have kept fuel densities low, and so now you end up with a lot more high severity fires in the West than had a fire regime kept under its historic recurrence. This to me is more a lesson of fire exclusion and keeping fire out of the system. If we're keeping it out of when it would burn with a beneficial effect, it will burn, and the probability of it burning at an unbeneficial state is higher.
So again, this is where it's complicated. We thought if only we could stop the fires, we'd win the fight. But the fires like the King Fire here show that stopping the fires only made it worse. Add that to the fact that we're living closer than ever to these wild lands. So to help us understand the wildland-urban interface, we met up with CAL FIRE. And as we were pulling up to this neighborhood, one of the residents quickly came out to tell us about the latest fire.
Yeah, our biggest fear is fire. It was very scary. I mean, everybody was honking and get out, and you know, there's a fire.
This is the risk across California. The response piece alone isn't going to solve this challenge if the homeowners aren't organized.
Because we're all in the same boat. One match away from everybody losing everything. It's a real fear.
Literally, we could have that fire spread up in here within a matter of seconds.
Wow.
California is going to have fires. We're not going to stop all the fires in California, so we have to have an infrastructure that's fire resistant. We need to work on policies that help us engage in active management of our forest. That's using prescribed fire as a tool. It's all the things in the toolbox. It's a combination of managing our forest and a combination of protecting our communities that are in them.
If it wasn't complicated enough, this made it very clear that you can't just let the fires burn whenever they start. The forests need to be managed to help mitigate the risk to us. But using fire seems to be one of the keys to making things safer, and knowing the science behind fire is always key to implementing good management. Fire Sciences Lab, right over here. So we made a stop at the Missoula Fire Lab to try to understand what we know about fire.
What? You see the flames at the very top and how they're sticking to the slope?
They really are. Everybody's laying down.
They're laying down. Well, that's flame attachment. Actually a very difficult thing to understand.
Here at the Fire Lab, the scientists study the basics of fire. Understanding the complexities here helps firefighters and forest managers in the field better predict and fight wildland fires.
Fires are inevitable. The only choices that we really have is what kind of fire to have and when do we want it. And that's it. Almost? Ready. You're ready. Jason's ready.
Mark's team is prepping to light a huge bed of precisely cut cardboard.
You're not going to be in any danger. So when the lights go out, don't move. Gasoline.
This is one of many experiments they'll run to understand the physics of fire, how it moves, how it spreads, and all of this measured by precise scientific instruments and high-speed cameras. tens of thousands of pieces of cardboard up in flames in mere seconds. The ongoing research will help us better understand fire with the ultimate goal that we can live better with it. But can we do that? There is one forest we knew of that seems to have figured out this coexistence with fire, a place where fires burn all summer, every summer. It's part of their way of life and a mentality we wanted to know about. And here we went out with our guides Frank Lake and Steve Valentine, who work with the local U.S. Forest Service and tribe to help keep a healthy forest.
This is perfect.
The fires basically come through and cleared out the understory, and all that's left are the trees.
Yeah, it's black and it's charred, and you just see a few of the earliest sprouts, but you come back in here a year, it's going to be alive again.
And to many, this may seem destroyed, but they view it differently here.
That fire's medicine, because it's not if it comes, it's when it comes. We need fire, and fire needs us.
You see, fire needs people to remind us how important fire is to the ecosystem. Frank and Steve's ancestors have been burning this forest for millennia. It's now part of what makes the forest special. They just want to make sure that it's not forgotten.
Basically, what you leave behind is what's important.
When they say this is your foods and your medicines, your sacred places, your springs, your water, that's essential, that's who we are as people. We have to learn to live with fire. We have to learn to respect fire. We have to maintain that security. That's why I do what I do.
Haley and I have learned a lot on our journey. We've learned that fire is complicated, and it's not as black and white as we make it out to be, and it is an integral part of our forests. They've had fire running through them for thousands of years, and they will continue to have fire in them in the future. And we can't always put the fires out. We have to decide what kind of fires to live with, and that is why we need to work with these fire crews from around the country. We also need a public who understands the importance of fire on the landscape. A healthy forest, you see, is a forest that lives with fire.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back for the coastal water forecast. South coast there, north winds 20 to 25 knots. And from the north coast, west-northwest, 15 to 20 knots. And for Lynn Canal Glacier Bay, winds will be out of the northwest at 10. Stevens Passage, north winds at 10 knots. Clarence Strait, northwest winds 20 knots, seas 4 feet. And then the day on Monday, for the south coast, northwest winds 20 knots, seas 7 feet. And south to west winds, 15 knots for the north coast. And Lynn Canal Glacier Bay, a little breezier there, south at 20, seas 4 feet. Southeast 15 for Stevens Passage. And Clarence Strait, northwest at 15. Prince William Sound, small craft advisories for Sunday. Southeast winds 30 knots, sea is 6 feet. And for the North Gulf Coast, south to southeast winds 20 to 25 knots, seas around 8 feet. And small craft advisories for the Barren Islands, southwest winds 25 knots. And southern Cook Inlet and Kamishak Bay, small craft advisories. South winds 25 to 30 knots, 7 to 9 foot seas. Northern Cook Inlet, variable winds at 15 knots. And for Monday, Northern Cook Inlet, light east winds at 10 knots. Prince William Sound, southeast winds 15 knots, seas subsiding to 3 feet. North Gulf Coast, 20 to 25 knot winds from the south. Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay, south winds 25 knots, 7 to 8 foot seas. And south of the Foreland, Southern Cook Inlet, small craft advisory, southeast winds 25 knots. Kodiak Island, south to southwest winds at 25 knots, seas at 8 feet for the day Sunday. Small craft advisories for the Alaska Peninsula, south winds 30 knots, 10 to 12 foot seas. And also small craft advisories for Bristol Bay for south winds at 25 knots. And for Monday, Bristol Bay, southwest winds 20 knots. Small craft advisories continue for the Alaska Peninsula, down to 25 knots from the southwest. Kodiak Island, southwest winds 20 to 25 knots. And for the eastern Aleutians, west-southwest winds 25 to 30 knots, with seas running 11 to 13 feet. And the central Aleutians Sunday, west winds 25 to 30 knots, and that's good for the western Aleutians as well. West winds 25 to 30 knots, seas across those areas running 10 to 13 feet. And for Monday, western Aleutians, west winds 20 knots. Central Aleutians, west-southwest winds at 20 knots. Eastern Aleutians, west winds 20 to 25 knots. And for the southwest coast, small craft advisory, south of Nunivak Island, south winds 25 knots. Also for the Pribilofs, south winds 25 knots, seas there up to 11 feet. Yukon Delta coast, southeast at 15. And for the St. Lawrence Island area, east winds 25 knots. Small craft advisories also for Norton Sound for southeast winds at 25 knots. St. Matthew Island, east at 15. And then for Monday, west winds 25 knots, 10-foot seas for the Pribilof Islands, St. Paul and St. George. And Kuskokwim Delta coast, small craft advisory, southwest at 25. St. Matthew Island into the Yukon Delta coast, winds will be westerly at 20 knots, east 15 for St. Lawrence Island. And for the Arctic coast, from Cape Thompson all the way over to Demarcation Point, east winds tomorrow at 15 knots. And from Cape Thompson to Wales, small craft advisories, east winds 25 knots. And then for the day on Monday, central and western Arctic coast, small craft advisories, east winds 25 knots. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast, east winds at 20 knots. And from Cape Beaufort down to Wales, winds will be east at 20 knots with seas running 4 to 5 feet. For tonight, a trough there along the Brooks Range will produce showers, actually possibly from Kotzebue, some isolated showers into the mountains there, and some of that into the North Slope, and amounts will be quite light. Increasing wind and rain into the southwest part of the state, as well as Kodiak Island and into Cook Inlet with that extensive warm front there, spreading moisture, keeping it into Prince William Sound. Stays mostly dry over the Panhandle, central interior areas, and then tomorrow, that front edges slowly eastward along with the low center, keeping it breezy and wet over the western and southwest part of the state from the Seward Peninsula to the Alaska Peninsula, increasing kind of cloudy and wet conditions again, but no heavy rain for south central Alaska. Mostly sunny for the Panhandle, partly sunny over the eastern interior, and foggy along the Arctic coast. And then for Monday, that front really weakens as it pushes into the interior. Some areas of light rain, becoming more showery for Kodiak Island, the Kuskokwim Valley. Periods of light rain for the North Gulf Coast. Increasing clouds in the Panhandle, but still dry. And unsettled over the eastern Bering Sea, and dry conditions for the central Aleutians.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.